Hey all, I was largely done with van content. I was going to be doing other stuff for a little bit, but apparently this one's a diva and needs to be the center of attention. Because I tried to go somewhere, and yeah. As far as I can tell, just from initial glances, it looks like the coolant is pouring out the weep hole in the bottom of the water pump, which is really annoying because it wasn't weeping before, and the pump doesn't seem to have a bad bearing that I can tell. Like, as much as I can wiggle it while it's in the serpentine belt, it doesn't seem to be moving. But, well, like, I won't be able to get it on film because it's up in there, but the weep hole is just pouring coolant out. So I need to get a bucket under this, and I need to try and find a water pump. All right, it's a couple days later. I have parts, so we're gonna fix this big beast. OXO parts: lower radiator hose and upper radiator hose. Heater hoses, which is probably going to involve taking out the diverter, whatever you call it, valve for rear heat that this van doesn't have but has hoses run for. Hose clamps, I have some more hose clamps. New cap, because why not? And then a brand new Gates water pump. So here's my shiny new water pump. I believe it goes, yes, this way, facing down. This is the weep hole on mine that's just decided to piss coolant. Like I said in the earlier section, there's no play that I can feel in the pulley, though once I get the belt off of it, I may be able to tell more. But this just started pouring out coolant, which makes no sense because this weep hole is supposed to start dripping coolant if your bearing is going, or the seals around the bearing are going. It shouldn't just out of nowhere start pouring coolant out. So I don't know what happened, but it doesn't change the fact that it needs a new water pump. It has the gaskets in there. So we're going to get all of this in with fresh coolant. I'm going to probably give the engine a quickie flush through the radiator and heater core while I'm in there. This is probably going to be a lot of jump cuts because you're not going to be able to see anything on a time lapse. You're going to just see my legs sticking out from underneath or whatever. Because of the wonderful design of these, you know, because it's a van, I suspect that it'll be easier to do the upper radiator hose and possibly the heater hoses through the interior by taking the doghouse out. So that'll be interesting. But yeah, I'm just going to kind of get to it and see what happens. All right, so the water pump is finally out, and I say finally because this bolt here was rusted in place, surrounded by crud. I could barely get the tool in, and you can see the kind of damage we did to the bolt trying to get it out before we finally did. But we did get it out. I'm going to need to get a replacement for this bolt so that I don't put such a rounded shoot-up head back on and screw the next person. What we're doing right now is getting the studs out of this so that I can swap them over to that. This is what holds the fan on. So what I'm basically doing is threading two nuts down and then locking them against each other by tightening them against each other, and then loosening the lower one. And because it can't move up because it's locked against the upper one, it unthreads the stud and brings it out. Then we're just cleaning it up, putting a little bit of blue Loctite on and moving them over to this one. This port needs to be swapped off from the old one to the new one. So I'm going to have to get a big honking wrench on this and crack this loose and hope it doesn't split, and then use some Teflon tape and install it in the new one. So once we get a replacement bolt, this can go back in, or rather this can go back in. All right, so water pump is replaced, upper radiator hose, lower radiator hose, and the two heater hoses. I also in the process was trying to remove the hoses that go to the rear heat for no reason, and trying to do that I damaged this switching valve thing, which I hope only goes to the rear heat, but I have a sneaking suspicion it doesn't. I have a sneaking suspicion that this is how it adjusts the actual temperature of the heat going into the van. So for right now, I just hooked the heater hoses directly to the heater core so that the system was watertight. So if I need to drive the van, I can. So I got to find out what's up with this valve, and then probably going to end up having to replace it. All right, a little bit more research. This is how the heat's controlled in the van, but what's happening right now makes no sense, because this is a diverter basically that determines how much water cycles through the heater core versus just goes back into the system. And without this, with the pipes hooked directly, I should be getting full water flow through the heater core at all times, which should be making it hot, and it's not. The heater core is cold. Like, the air coming out of the heat is cold, so the pipes going into it are cold. I don't understand at all what's going on. So I ended up getting you can just kind of see it under there, a new heater valve. Turns out I could get it locally for almost as cheap as Rock Auto, so getting it today was good. In the process of putting that in, it didn't fit well in the original place. It was hard up against this in a bad way, so now it's hard up against it in a different way. But to do that, I had to take out the lines that went to the non-existent rear heat, which was a bit of a pain in the butt. And I discovered they had coolant in them. So yeah, that was basically a time bomb, because those, were 26-year-old hoses. But that's all been, the bracketry and everything there that was supposed to be for that is now all completely gone, up as far as where the transmission is under the van. At some point I'll crawl under there and remove the rest of it that goes over the transmission and down the other side, but I can't be bothered right now. Also, when I cut these lines to install the heater valve, there was no fluid in the upper line, so there's a major air pocket. So what I've got it doing right now is I've got the heater valve. When I started the van, I had the heater valve on full heat, and then I switched it over for a little bit to full cool, and now it's somewhere between the two. Like, it's in the middle range, so theoretically fluid is going in both directions. And when I did that, I got a ton of bubbles out of the radiator, so I'm hoping that means that it has purged out most, if not all, of the air there. There doesn't seem to be any bleeder in the system, even though the heater box is pretty high up, so hopefully that won't turn out to be some major issue. I'm running it right now, getting it properly up to temperature so that I can make sure to get as much air out of the system as possible. But I'm pretty confident in it. I don't have any leaks that I can see. Obviously, I'm going to be keeping an eye on that. Everything's so wet under there, I can't be 100% sure. But it now has new hoses, new water pump, new heater control valve, which wasn't bad, but is now good. It's got a new thermostat, because the other one was kind of rusty and gross. The only thing I didn't change was it's got a new cap, because the other one was rusty and gross. The only thing I didn't change was the thermostat, because it's always been perfectly cool. It's never had a problem heating up or staying cool, so I decided not to mess with something that's working. But yeah, this one should be full fighting force again. So yeah, I'll talk to you all later. Bye.